Thank you so much for coming to Session 3 of Spirit, the stimulating program initiative for retirees that inspires thought. I'm Judy Steinig, Rebbitzin of the Young Israel of Bayside, and Associate Director, Community Services of the Orthodox Union. And it is my pleasure to welcome you here. It's nice to have such a great crowd, and we're happy that some people were able to spend their day off for Veterans Day with us today. This event is a program of the Orthodox Union in conjunction with OHEL, Stage, and Margaret Tietz, the Rehab Center of Center Light. This Spirit program has been presented previously in Teaneck, New Jersey, Boynton Beach, and Boca Raton, Florida, the 5 towns, and we are very, very happy to be presenting it here over this past month in Central Queens. By the way, for any of you that are snowbirds who will be going down to Florida, at this point in time, mid-February, we're scheduled for a session in Boynton and a session in Century Village, Boca, and perhaps we'll be able to get others. So stay tuned, and we'll tell you what we're doing and when we're doing it and exactly where. And if you know of shuls that would be interested, you tell them to let us know. The OU recognizes that as the generation of baby boomers leave their professional responsibilities, they are looking for educational stimulation. The goal of this program is to provide active retirees with opportunities for spiritual and intellectual growth within their communities. We are truly appreciative of the hospitality of Young Israel of Kew Gardens Hills, and particularly the assistance of Rabbi Yoel Schoenfeld, Mordechai Asra, the board and membership for the promotion of this program. OHEL Family Services has been working hard for the Jewish community throughout the New York metropolitan area. The OU has been partnering with OHEL on many levels in numerous programs over the years. Our presenter from Session 1 is a staff member at OHEL who spoke about the various family dynamics. That presentation will be available shortly at our website at oucommunity.org, where you can view actually all of the Spirit programs. Stage is an organization that works with retirees to bring Jewish meaning to their next stage of life. We want to welcome Rabbi Aryeh Borsuk, who's in the back, who has recently joined the Stage staff as program director. Rabbi Borsuk will be speaking to us a little bit later after the break about the goals of Stage and how you can be involved. We are truly appreciative to Margaret Tietz for its generous sponsorship of this program. I don't have to tell most of you too much about the Tietz Rehab facility, because I'm sure many of you have had friends and relatives who have rehabbed there. I mentioned already the past couple of weeks that I had my own personal experience there 6 years ago after I broke my hip, in my own house, by the way. But Baruch Hashem, it was a wonderful experience. I'm up and running now. And for anybody who doesn't know, Margaret Tietz is, I consider it 5-star catering under the VOD of Queens. So it's something that you should always be aware of. It has state-of-the-art PT and OT, and it's something that if you need, or members of your family need, it is a wonderful resource in this community. No program ever takes place without much work behind the scenes, and we're truly appreciative to our committee, which worked hard on catering, setup, and promotion of the program. Thanks so much to Phyllis Zelkowitz, Carol Neufeld, Saul and Grace Lauber for your dedication and assistance on all of our programs. Today's program will deal with finances and how we can ensure that there will be enough for all of us to get through the retirement years. We know that it's a big challenge. Before our first speaker, I am pleased to call upon Kim Zeitman, Deputy Director of the Hebrew Free Loan Society, who will discuss a new initiative that can be very exciting for retirees. We have flyers that talk about the program on the back table, so we want you please to look at them and to speak and to listen to Kim. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy. My name is Kim Zeitman. I'm the Deputy Director of the Hebrew Free Loan Society in New York. Some of you may have heard of us. We've been around a very long time, 122 years to be precise. But these days we're doing a lot of new things that some people don't know about. And one of those things is a special entrepreneurship program specifically targeting Jewish baby boomers. And this course is called Encore Entrepreneurs, Basic Business Training for Baby Boomers. And it targets people age 50 plus, primarily Jews, who were displaced or out of work for a time as a result of the recession or its aftermath. So these are former professionals, managers, they've had careers. The recession happened, they were impacted negatively by that. They've had trouble finding new jobs or maybe only part-time work. They're not really doing what they want to be doing and using their skills in ways that they want to be using them. So this course offers them a chance to learn how to start and grow their own businesses. It could be a consulting business, doing something that they've done in the past and creating their own work out of that, or it could be a brand new business totally unrelated to anything they've done before. So the program uses the Fast Track New Venture Entrepreneurship Program. It was developed by a foundation that is a leader in entrepreneurship education in the United States. And it gives the essential skills and knowledge that you need to know to start a business. Everything from how to conduct a market analysis to determine who your target market is, to how to price your product, to what your competitive advantage is, all the basic skills you need to know to run a business. And it also serves as a peer group of sorts. So a lot of people have a lot of anxiety about not being able to find a job or the vast challenge of starting their own business. And all the participants really become supportive of one another. They become each other's sounding boards and resources, and in one case that I'll tell you about in a second, they became business partners. So Steve and Liz are a great example of what this course can offer. So Steve lost his job as a managing director at a real estate consulting firm in 2008. Liz was a senior vice president of human resources. She had 12 years tenure at BNY Mellon, and she lost her job in 2012. So they didn't know each other. They met at an outplacement service after they both lost their jobs. And Liz heard about the course through friends, and she told Steve about it, and they both decided to take the course. So since they'd become friendly, they would meet after each course session, and the course lasts 12 weeks. It meets for 4 hours on Wednesdays. And they would just debrief and hash out what they'd learned and talk about their next steps to starting a business. And through what they learned in the course, they realized that by combining their expertise and their experience and their knowledge, they could start a business together that would probably be very successful. So they began a business that offered presentation coaching to mid and high-level executives. Now, this was about 2 years ago. Today, they have a solid roster of returning clients in the US and in Europe, and a thriving business, and they're both thrilled with the path that they've taken. So they're just one example of what's happened as a result of this course. We've had graphic designers, teachers, college coaches, human resources professionals, clothing designers, everything you can think of. And they're all starting new businesses and reinventing themselves in order to continue making money and to have a career that they can be proud of and happy with. So if you have any interest in learning more about the course, I'm sitting in the corner over there, and I'm going to stay through the first part of today's presentation, so I'll be here during the break. There are flyers in the back and at the table I'm sitting at, and I have my cards as well. And registration is open. The course starts on December 3rd. So I would be thrilled to talk further with you about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kim. Kim will be waiting around till after the break, and this way anybody, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that want to talk to her about this exciting program. I want to acknowledge also the presence and the assistance of Mrs. Bella Kirshner, who was helping us at registration. Bella is now the founder of Life Source Solutions, which is a free referral service for seniors and caregivers, providing customized solutions to your life's challenges. So Bella will also be here, and we'll be happy to talk to anybody who would like to share in that resource. Without further ado, though, it is my pleasure and honor to call upon our first speaker, Rabbi Shlomo Hochberg, the Marja Asra of Young Israel of Jamaica Estates, where we were so graciously treated on our first program. Rabbi Hochberg doesn't need any introduction here because everybody knows him very well. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule.
Thank you very much, Judy Steinig, first of all, and the Orthodox Union for putting together the program. Thanks as well to OHEL and to Stage and to Margaret Tietz, and of course the Young Israel of Kew Gardens Hills for hosting today. So the topic is, I find, a very fascinating topic, and generally we look for guidance from the Torah, You can look for guidance in Chuvos, which we'll get to a few responses which I think deal with the issues at hand. But I'd like to first start by going back to the, if you will, the Avos and Imahos, try to figure out who was the primary matriarch or patriarch who actually focused their attention on money, and that was really Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu, a lot of his story is about money. He was the first, he focused on material possessions, if you will, beginning with the bracha that Yitzchak Avinu gave him, Yitein lecha mital shemaim shmei haaretz, rov dagan v'tirosh, abundant crops. Apparently it was very important for the Jewish people to have sufficient funds, which is something that we all, of course, aspire to. But if you follow the story of Yaakov through, so Yaakov, of course, goes to Haran, and he finds Leah, and he finds Rachel, and he marries them, and so on, and he works for 14 years, and 14 years are up, and then he says to Lavan, when will I also be able to make for myself? Meaning Yaakov Avinu, even though Yaakov Avinu is depicted, and certainly this is true, he's depicted as one who sat all the time in the Beis Medrash. He understands very well that he's working, he has to earn a living, and Mosai Yasel, he wants to know when is he going to be able to provide for his family. And so that's what he says to Lavan, and they make this deal, and he works for 6 years. At the end of the 6 years, he tries to describe to Rachel and Leah what happened, and he says, Ve'elokei avi haya imadi. On the one hand, he says, the God of my ancestors was with me. And then he says, Avadati b'chol kochi, and I work with all of my effort. And if you follow the story of Yaakov Avinu, so it's a very difficult story to try and follow, because the Mefarshim all try to struggle with exactly what Yaakov Avinu did, you know, with the rods and with the speckled rods and the cut rods, and he had speckled sheep and so on. And most of the people focus their attention on, was Yaakov honest, was Yaakov not honest? And he goes to a very clear description of why what he did was just fine, and that's not the topic for today. But it's clear that Yaakov Avinu worked very hard to make sure that his flocks would grow. He had a great interest in making sure that he would earn enough money to be able to go back. He was going back to Israel, wants to be able to support his family in Israel, and his goal, as stated at the beginning, was, when will I do for my family? So, because of his concern to take care of his family, he understood he has to work very hard to somehow put together what I'll call a nest egg, because that's the topic that Mr. Preil is going to talk about. But it's not about a nest egg yet, it's about really putting together, understanding that our support is dependent on ourselves. Notwithstanding that, he says, Velokei avi, so on the one hand, he says, I put all my effort, I worked as hard as I could. And then he says, Hashem Elokai Avi Hayoi, and he says, but the God of my father was with me. So which is it? I worked hard, or God's with me? So the obvious answer is, well, that's both, and you require both. If you analyze a very fascinating Sefer Elvan Asmecha by Rabbi Tachtal, wrote a sefer which is connected actually to Zionism, and he had a change of heart in terms of his perspective. His perspective going into, he lived during the Holocaust and died, unfortunately, during the Holocaust, was killed. But his perspective going into the Holocaust was that Zionism is negative. He came from that school of thought, Zionism is negative, and that's why the problems are happening, and so on. And it doesn't matter what you think about politically, but he made an about-face during his time in the Holocaust for the following reason. Very famous pasuk we're all familiar with, Achasho Alti, Me'ez Hashem, Oso Avakesh. Achasho Alti, one thing I ask of God, Oso Avakesh, that's what I seek. And if you look at the pasuk, it seems like he's just repeating himself. David HaMelech's repeating himself. I ask one thing from God, that's what I ask for. But Rav Tachtal had a particular take on what's going on over here, and he said, Achasho Alti is what I daven for. And Oso Avakesh is I demonstrate that I'm actually working for it. And he cites an interesting Gemara, and the Gemara cites 3 cases of a person who wants to accomplish something, and the Gemara says, how do you accomplish it? So the Gemara starts and says, if a person wants to be wealthy, what should they do? They should buy a field and they should work. Then the Gemara says, well, some people buy a field and work, and they don't earn money. So what should they do? They should daven. So the Gemara says, well, maybe just daven. So the Gemara says, no, you need both. So we know very well it's possible to become wealthy without working. There's such a thing as a windfall. But nonetheless, the Gemara says, work. You want to be wealthy, work, and daven. Those two together will be efficient. Then the Gemara goes to the next case. What if somebody wants to become wise? So you want to become wise, you have to learn, you have to study. So the Gemara says, well, some people study and don't become wise. So what you do, you should daven. So maybe you should just daven. I remember when I was a child, elementary school, My mother would tell me, put the book under my pillow. Somehow osmosis would have it go into my head. So that wasn't studying. It was, I don't know what it was. Maybe it's to make me feel more confident that I knew it, but it wasn't a hocus pocus. But the point is, theoretically, one could also daven and just become wise. After all, some people are just blessed with wisdom. You could daven, be blessed with wisdom. So that also is possible. You could become more. But nonetheless, the Gemara says, no, daven and learn, do both. You want to become wise, you have to do both. So both of those is possible to do if you want to just daven theoretically. The Gemara still says daven and do the work, daven and study. And then the Gemara brings a third case. And the third case is, let's suppose someone wants to have children. What should they do? They should get married. Oh, some people get married, don't have children. Daven. Maybe just daven. So that's not our faith, right? We don't believe that that works, right? So obviously it doesn't work. So the three cases given, and the third case, if you will, is an indicator that even in the cases where you think davening alone could work, davening alone cannot work. Just like it doesn't work by pregnancy, you have to do what you have to do, you be married and so on, and if you're blessed and you daven and you're blessed with children, you're blessed. The same is true about wisdom and about wealth. So Rav Tachtal understands this applies to the pasuk, Achasha alti me'es Hashem also avakesh. I daven to God, also avakesh, and that's what I seek. So avakesh is not about davening, it's about what you do with your life. So this is a very, I think, good philosophical question. Does God need our work? Well, the answer clearly is he doesn't. He can make us wealthy, he can make us wise, he could even make somebody pregnant if he wanted to. He doesn't, but if he wanted to, he could without being married. It's all possible, it's in God's hands, he could do those miracles. God does not want that. So what do you need Osor Vakesh? The Osor Vakesh is not because necessarily the work is what accomplishes it, but because the work indicates to God that you're really serious. If somebody just davens and doesn't put in any effort to accomplish their goals, so God says, you're not serious. You're just dumping it all on me. Now it's true, we do dump it all on God because it's all up to God. But God wants to know we're serious. So if we're serious, you want to have children, you get married, you want to learn, you want to be smart, you study, you want to be wealthy, you work, and all those things accomplish. So Yaakov Avinu, living way before Rav Tachtal and even before David HaMelech, who says that pasuk, Yaakov Avinu understood, Avadati b'kol chochi, that's a piece of what I have to do. I have to put in all my effort, but it's up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then at the end of the story, so he's describing to Rachel and Leah what happened. This is after he obtains all those sheep and cattle and so on. And he says, Vayatzel Elokim Es kol asher levicha vayiten li, et miknei avicha v'chem vayiten li. So God somehow saved it and gave it to me. So that was God's plan. But in the end of the day, Yaakov Avinu explains to Rachel and Leah and explains to Lavan that all of this did not happen only by God, but I had to put my effort in order to make it accomplish. Yaakov Avinu also, that's all in Vayetze, and Vayishlach, next parsha also, Yaakov Avinu, Vayivaser Yaakov Vado, Yaakov Avinu is found all by himself. He brings everyone over, passes over to Nachla Yabok, he passes over and then he goes back all by himself. And Rashi says, why did he go back? Chazal said, why did he go back? He went back for Pachim Ketanim. He went back for little small jugs. Small jugs, worth very little. Maybe they're not worth it. So if you think about this is a good question to think about. So I'm not a very big environmental fanatic, but I do believe we're supposed to do what's responsible. So you have things, you put them in the recycle and so on. And what do you do with your bottles for which you can get 5 cents back in return? So you can do a lot of different things with it, but those 5 cents or 10 cents, whatever the return is something God wants to have. So I happen to absolve myself of my distaste for going to the recycle, and I dafka put my recycled garbage out always Sunday before 3 o'clock because there are always people collecting it, and it's a contribution to the poor. But if I just throw it away, it's basically saying that those 5 cents are not important to anybody, and they're just going to crumple up, become recycled plastic, nobody's going to benefit from it. So I know the people struggling around, going Sunday afternoon through the neighborhood, my neighborhood is, the collection's Monday morning, going through the neighborhood, they're struggling to make ends meet, so I'm helping them in a way, even though there's no child deduction and so on. So at least I understand. But the value of the point is, every single thing has a value, and we have to recognize the value that's in that. Okay, that's a background to, we'll say, part 2, which discusses, I think, the different issues. The part one was really to establish the principle that I'm responsible to do what I'm responsible to do, and it's true that I also have to daven to God. So the question was asked of several poskim, Moshe Feinstein being the greatest in terms of America, Binyan insurance. What about insurance? And this will apply to other things as well, but his question was about life insurance. And he says, is there an Isur Likach insurance policy, that's written in Hebrew or Yiddish, because maybe it's choser bitachon, maybe it shows a lack in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shebi chalto la'oshro. After all, God, if he wants me to be wealthy, can make me wealthy. Why do I have to buy insurance? But he wants, he wants to leave a lot of money for his heirs, and therefore it's not for himself. Welcome to Rabbi Schoenfeld, and thank you for hosting us. Rabbi Schoenfeld was on a very important meeting, I know, so. And he said, we're not allowed to rely upon miracles. We have to do the work we have to do. He says, we're not allowed to rely upon the miracles, so to speak, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends parnasa, but lo shum avodo miskar, without any work. So that's about work. Well, what about insurance? Insurance seems to promote the notion that when a person passes away, God won't take care of the heirs. So that's the question. So of course, God can take care of the heirs. That does not absolve me of my responsibility to do what I'm supposed to do. So therefore, he says, Vaday osur l'smoch. One is not allowed to rely upon that, even though I know, tzarich leidah shekol ma shemarviach me'avodato mischar hu rak me'Hashem yisbarach. Even though I know whatever I earn from my work comes from God, nonetheless, I'm not allowed to rely upon that. The same way here, I'm not allowed to rely upon, we'll say, not getting insurance, and my term, not his term, being irresponsible. So the question that he was asked actually was not only, there were two different shuvos, was not only whether to get insurance, but what kind of insurance to buy. And this is not, this is a tshuva, which is a tshuva to a particular person in, I believe, in 1965. And he was asked an eitzah. He was asked to give advice for two different kinds of insurance. And the two different kinds of insurance were as follows. One insurance was Gam Hu Atzmo Yaneh B'Ziknuto. So I think, and Mr. Preil, I'm sure, could explain better the insurances, but based on my own insurance experience. So there are various insurances, like whole life insurance, where in the end of the day you can, take out dividends and withdraw and so on, because there's a cash balance, there's something in there you can take out, and you can benefit from it during your old age. So that's one possibility. He calls that insurance katan. And then he says Gedolah, a big insurance, Sharak acharei moto, only after person away, lishto vanav. And then there will be a bigger benefit for the wife and children. Which should you do? And apparently the premiums are the same. I don't really understand. The premiums are the same, but the take back for oneself is smaller, but the take back, the death benefit will be greater. Which should you do? So he recommends, but after his recommendation, after the next line, because that's very important, he recommends, Yoter tov yikach bituach al 50,000. Better to take the larger insurance policy, $50,000. Think back to 1965, $50,000 was an enormous amount of money in those days. This will be enough that the wife, the widow, and the children, Rahman al-Islam, will be able to have a very big pot, so to speak, after he passes away. So he recommends that. And God will take care of you in your later years. Ein tzorech lo, that God will take care of him because God will take care of your parnasa. Okay. But then at the end he says, very important line, Ulai lefi hatnaim ein li'a eitz kain. But perhaps according to the conditions, this is not the right advice. So, and that to me is like one of the key lines, because he's saying particular case, and he's saying, but I don't really know all the facts. I only know the facts you present to me. And he didn't say these words, but it's clear to me, he's saying, between the lines, please consult a financial advisor and find out what is the right thing to do. Meaning, I'm paskening based on my knowledge of the financial conditions, and I might be wrong. So he doesn't write, I might be wrong, but he's saying, Ulai l'fi hatnaim ein li'etz kain. Perhaps according to real conditions, this is not the right advice to give. So I'm not giving you advice. I'm just trying to give you like parameters, so to speak. So it could be that the one is right, it could be the other is right, and it could be maybe, Shlomo Hochberg's opinion, maybe one should try and do some of each. So that's probably not at our stage of life to be thinking about which one of those you probably did already. But what it does for me is it puts in perspective in terms of recognizing that financial conditions that a person has should educate us about what are the things we should do for ourselves. So I have a list here, and the list probably is not comprehensive, but it's comprehensive to my mind. So the main insurance that's spoken about in terms of the tshuva is life insurance, but I believe has ramifications not just for life insurance, but for other kinds of insurance. Some of these also may be for people younger than us, but hopefully we all have people younger than us in our families, children, grandchildren, and so on, and those messages should be passed along. Certainly anybody who's still working should have disability insurance. And I once heard actually from one of the darshanim, I don't remember which one, but one of the big darshanim, Rabbi Preil, Rabbi Fran, I don't remember which one it was, who had the following idea that somebody should give as a wedding gift to a young couple a life insurance policy of $250,000 of term life insurance, which at the time I think they said cost about $200. Now, the numbers may be off. I don't know what the numbers are, but they can't be that far off. A couple getting married is, say, someplace in their 20s. Their life expectancy is very long. The rates can't be that high. Because we know, unfortunately, in the sad world, we know of young people who pass away and they leave either widows or widowers with children, and then there's collections for them. And we should all, of course, contribute those collections when they occur. But we can also avoid those collections by making sure that young couples who get married should have insurance. So myself, when I got married, I didn't get insurance. My wife became pregnant, we got insurance. Another child, we got insurance. Found out my child had special needs, got more insurance. So in other words, the insurance basically went with what perceived needs might be in the future, and that certainly, I think, should apply in its message, I think, to take home and maybe even to gift to children and grandchildren at various times of their life. We give them all kinds of gifts, and in that drasha, this is what I remember so well, instead of giving them another China place setting, give them a term life insurance policy. So I think that's very instructive in terms of planning. Okay, so let's try to come back to us. The things that we need, I think, for ourselves. Yes?
That's been talked about for a long time, why yeshivas here or Israel don't quite inexpensive term policy for the rabbis. How many times see paper reflecting so-and-so died, left 7 kids? I mean, I remember we were on a plane with Hochberg, I think that's 20 years ago, and his mission was to visit every issue to find, raise money to convince them to buy term policies, and he was having problems.
So, okay, so we have questions for later. Okay, so I will answer the question. I believe, and I wish I knew the name of the organization, I believe there's an organization now that does organize term life policies for Rabbeim and tries to, notice they raise money for it and they pay for it. So I'm not familiar with the name of the organization. You can, what is it called? Oh, GRUS, yes, that's right, GRUS did that. So you can Google GRUS and find out, and if you want to contribute to such a fund, you can. Okay, just move on. Okay, so among the health insurances that are most important for us are, the insurances most important for us, we'll say, are health insurance. And again, you need a financial advisor to advise you. You may have your private plan, you may have your Medicare plan, you may have Medicaid plan, all those things go together, and I don't know how Obamacare fits into this at all. So you have to find somebody who has a great understanding of this. But certainly we all understand very well that it's extremely important that we want to be able to go to our doctor, we want to be able to be treated and not lack treatment because we can't afford it. So we want to make sure we have the right type of insurance that we can have. Long-term care insurance I find very important, and my mother's Bracha is gone 7 years. And she was not old enough, but she was old. You can look at me and see that she was, 25, 30 years older than me, because I'm the youngest in the family. So she passed away 7 years ago. She had term life insurance. I mean, she had long-term care insurance, and she was like before her time, because she wanted to know, she doesn't want to go to nursing home, she wants to know she has care for herself. It turned out she didn't need, unfortunately, for so long, but we all know of people, and whatever you want, there are all kinds of different types of policies of long-term care insurance, and again, consult with your financial planner and insurance agent to find out which is the right plan for you. There are plans that are, you have to prove everything. There are plans you don't have to prove everything, and you have to prove that person deserves it, but some have to prove what the bills were, some don't have to prove what the bills were. I and my wife, thank God, were able to get an insurance policy, I don't even know if it's available anymore, that actually will pay anywhere in the world, because ultimately we hope to make Aliyah, and this plan that I'm on will actually, we can move to Israel, prove, God forbid, that we can't, that we're entitled to the long-term care, and they'll send the money over there. So hopefully we'll never need it, but it's important for me to know that my children will not have to worry about that, and that I will be taken care of, my wife will be taken care of, if God forbid that need is there. And more, we'll say, global need, everyone needs some kind of pension, and whatever you want to call it, pension, Social Security, retirement fund, and that's certainly, it may be at this point in our ages that it's beyond the time to build a fund, but again, a financial planner can tell you whether you can keep building and how to take it out, what the right way to take it out is, and so on. And all of that, to me, falls under what Yaakov Avinu was doing. Yaakov Avinu understood, I have to do Levesi. It didn't take away one iota from the knowledge that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Elokei Avi Be'ezri, God's the one who's taking care of me, but I have to be responsible. God should see I'm trying to do everything that I could do. I have a very side point, but it's on my list of connected to insurance, and it's one of my pet topics. Nothing to do with the topic of today, except it's related to insurance. And that is, if you have children or grandchildren who are going to get married, so they should have a halachic prenuptial agreement. And if you don't know what it is, you can just go to beitdin.org and you'll find out what it is. But basically, it's to prevent future agunos. Past agunos cases, we're trying to solve them one by one. We have the ability to prevent future agunos, and that's what it's about. Young couples in love, it doesn't feel so good to sign a halachic prenuptial and saying, well, if this happens, so on. So if you study it, it's not so unpleasant anyway, but in Jamaica States, it's well known that I won't be Masada Kedushin if they don't sign it, and I would say probably 95% of people in Jamaica States sign it, whether Masada Kedushin or not, and I think that's a universal thing. And it falls into the same category. We're supposed to do what we're supposed to do. We can't prevent every bad thing from happening in the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu controls the world. We don't know why he does X, why he does Y, but we do know HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects us to be Osor Vakesh. Yaakov Avinu was an Ish Tam Yosheva Halim. Yaakov Avinu was an Ish Emes, a man of truth. Yaakov Avinu also taught us how to deal with financial issues and understood that you have both halves. Finally, just back to Yaakov Avinu, he said, Kol asher whatever I'll receive from you, I will give maser. So a piece of this is the recognition, that is, if you will, the underlining position. Yaakov Avinu understands, whatever I do to work, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a partner. The maser indicates HaKadosh Baruch Hu's partnership. It shows HaKadosh Baruch Hu is still a partner. And I would advise you also, you can consult your rabbinic authority, your own personal rabbinic authority, in terms of some of the things that I recommended that you do for other people, like children, Rabbi, and so on. Obviously, some of those can be taken from maser. Your own personal, I think, cannot be. But I think you should discuss that also with your rabbinic authority. It's been a pleasure. I hope that I've given a proper introduction, really, to Mr. Preil, who will educate us about the financial aspects. I look forward to hearing what he has to say, because whatever it is we heard already, it's always good to hear more. There's always new things to hear, new angles to hear, and I look forward very much to hearing it. And thanks to Judy Steinig and the OU, and et cetera. Thank you. I can take questions now.
But please make it questions and not comments, okay? We just want, if anyone has a question, we're going to ask them to stand up. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Hochberg. We're going to take a quick break of 10 minutes, and then we're going to continue with the program. We're going to continue with the program, so I'd like everyone seated so that we can begin. We've so far been really going, these programs have been really done pretty punctually, and we're very proud of that, so we want to continue. So it's my pleasure at this time to call upon Rabbi Aryeh Borsuk, who will tell us a little bit about stage and will introduce the next part of the program.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank everyone for coming again. Thank you to Rebbe Steinig and the OU for all of their work. We may be officially co-sponsors, but we are certainly not co-organizers. Rebbe Steinig did nearly all of the work, and we are very grateful for that. She did a great job. And thank you to all the other co-sponsors. Just a quick word about who we are, what I'm doing here. We are an organization named STAGE. Rebbe Steinig mentioned that. Our mission is to try to help retirees grow. As far as we know, there isn't much being done on an organizational level targeting retirees specifically, and there's a great opportunity for people to grow. In fact, someone showed me a very interesting medrash this week on last week's Parsha. The Pasuk tells us that towards the end of last week's Parsha, Avram, the Pasuk describes as Vayita Eshel, he planted an Eshel, and there's two explanations in the Medrash and the Gemara what that means. If it was literally planted and he planted an orchard, or if he figuratively planted, he planted a hotel, an inn for the wayfarers. But it's clear what he was doing was a new chesed venture that he hadn't done before. He was expanding his opportunities to do chesed, to host people, and he planted this orchard, he started this business of a hotel. Whatever exactly he did, he launched something new. And the Medrash recounts why this happened. What sparked Avram to do this? And the Medrash tells us that Avram bumped into Shem, the son of Noach, and they're having a discussion. And Avram asked Shem, what zechus did you have? What was the merit that got you out of the teva after the flood and let you repopulate the world? And Shem responded, according to the Medrash, that it was the zechus of the chesed that he had done. All the chesed that Noach and his children had done for all the animals in the teva, that taking care of them, feeding them, making sure they all had what they need to survive the nearly full year in the teva, that was the zechus that got them out. And Avram said to himself, if that's the zechus of chesed with animals, imagine what the zechus would be for working with people. And he took that inspiration and ran with it and started this Eshel, started this hotel or orchard. And someone pointed out to me just a very beautiful insight that Avram Avinu was clearly not a young man. It's hard to know exactly how old he was, but he was at least 110 years old at that point. 110 is significantly old, even if you lived 160 or whatever Avram lived to. And Avram Avinu had already done a tremendous amount of chesed. He was very accomplished. He had already had the story that we read about in the beginning of last week's parsha with the three angels. He was a Baal Chesed. He was a Navi. He was a prophet. He had already achieved the level of perfection needed for that. Yet when he was inspired, he took on a whole new venture that he had never done before. And I think that's something that we can all be inspired by and we can all aim for. That no matter what we've accomplished until now, we can always try to find ways to inspire ourselves and grow more and grow further and start new ventures. And whether that's with Kim at the Hebrew Free Loan Society and starting a business venture, or through us trying to start something a little more spiritual with lectures, classes, volunteer work, we would like to encourage everyone to share their ideas with us as to what we can be doing to be helpful. And we're going to do the work to try to get these things off the ground. I would like to now call upon Rabbi and Mr. Preil. He wears two hats, he told me. He's both been an educator in a variety of institutions. For the last 12 years, he's been teaching Chumash and Navi at Stern, a wonderful institution. And also in the last 12 years or so, he's been doing a lot of work. He's a certified retirement income planner and a long-term care planner. And then that had, I guess we would call it Mr. Preil today. But Elozor Preil is going to speak to us on the topic of hatching the nest egg and ensuring financial security throughout the retirement years. And I'd like to call upon Rabbi Mr. Preil.
Hi, good afternoon. Now, they say that the worst time to speak to a group is in the early afternoon because our body's cycles tend to slow down a bit in the early afternoon before we get our second wind, especially after we've eaten lunch. So I hope we'll be able to prove that under the right circumstances that doesn't have to slow us down or put us to sleep. I would ask everybody to check if they have, there's one handout that we're going to be referring to in the presentation. It's the one called How Will Market Ups and Downs Affect Your Retirement? So if you don't have this one, there's more copies, I believe, in the back. That's the one that we are going to be referring to. The title of our presentation is Hatching the Nest Egg, Ensuring Financial Security Throughout the Retirement Years. Now, the nest egg is obviously a metaphor. We use the term nest egg to refer to an amount of assets, of money that we have amassed over time. And now when we retire with that nest egg, and we have to hatch it and therefore use it. But what's really interesting is, let's think about a real nest egg is a bird sitting on its egg, and it sits on it until it's ready to hatch. Now let's think for a minute. When the egg hatches, is that the end of the bird's responsibility? And the answer is no. Until the bird is capable of fending for itself, the mother bird will care for the baby bird, feed it, keep it warm, etc., until the bird is able to go off on its own. And that actually carries over to the idea of our retirement nest egg as well, because when we reach the point in our lives, whatever age it might be, that we decide to stop working and to dip into the nest egg to hatch it, that doesn't end our responsibility, because now the real work begins, which is making sure that it lasts and it doesn't run out. And so we can think of retirement then as a form of a marathon, because it lasts a long time. If you wanted to run a marathon, you wouldn't simply wake up one morning and say, hey, I'm ready, let's go run. No, you have to train, you have to prepare in advance. And you have to prepare for all different types of conditions that might arise. It could be rainy, it could be cold, it could be hot, it could be very windy, like last Sunday, which was a new type of challenge. And you don't always know exactly what's going to be out there. And that's the kind of planning we need to do for retirement as well. Because we don't know. I mean, even a marathon, as long as it is, you know that it's 26 miles, 385 yards, and that's it. Well, retirement isn't necessarily the same way. A retirement could last 20 years, it could last 30 years, it might even last 40 years. And how do you plan for that? So, what we're going to discuss is a number of different threats, 6 specific risks or threats that we all face in retirement. And hopefully I'll be able to point out there, the teacher in me loves to get ideas across and get new ideas across, and if there's something that you could hear and say, hey, I didn't know that, and that's a new takeaway, that excites me. So hopefully I'll leave you with about 4 or 5 new takeaways. The biggest threat, the number one threat in retirement, is what's called, officially it's called longevity risk, and it means the risk that we're going to live, I won't say too long, Khalila, but that we're going to live a long time. And the statistics on this are kind of striking. If you have 2 people who are 65 years old, a husband and a wife who are in good health, they have a good chance that at least one of them is going to live until age 95. There's a 50% chance, that's half will and half won't, that one will live till 92. There's a 25% chance that one of them will live until age 97. That's a long time. Now, we may not like thinking that way, no, al tiftach pel satan, but in terms of financial planning, we have to plan for that. I mean, halavai, we should live that long and be healthy, but it's going to take a lot of money also. The next risk is inflation risk. Now, we're all old enough to remember the good old days of the 1970s, in the 60s, when inflation was crazy. People who are younger really don't have that fear or that sense, because things have been pretty moderate for the last 10 or 15 years. But it's still there, even if it's a low inflation rate, but over the course of time, it multiplies, it compounds. And what it really means is, down to earth is it's purchasing power risk. It's that every year, everything you need to buy is going to cost more. And this is really a problem if, like many people in retirement, want to be very safe, so they put their money in fixed income vehicles, treasury bills, etc. Well, once upon a time, that wasn't a bad idea. Back in 1980, treasury bills paid almost 15%. So if a person had $1 million and they were just living off the interest of their treasury bills, they could live on $150,000 a year, and they were doing pretty nicely. That's 30 years ago. Well, by 2000, it was down to about 5%. 5 years later, it's about 3%. And today, the treasury bills are about 1.5%. So your $1 million nest egg will produce a whopping $15,000 a year. Hardly enough to, maybe enough to last a month. So that's certainly not going to help you win the retirement marathon by having all your money in fixed income. Well, what's the alternative? The alternative is to have money in equities, in stocks, mutual funds, etc. Historically, stocks outperform fixed income. They'll return more of a return over the long haul. The problem is, it's riskier. There's a reason why the return is better, is because there's more risk. When there's more risk, the markets have to provide more reward. And here comes a very important thing to understand. Market risk means different things when you're saving for retirement than when you're in retirement. When you're saving for retirement, let's say you participate in a 401k at work, and you're putting money away on a regular basis. So you don't like it when the market goes down. But if you're 40 or 50 years old, and the market took a hit like it did in 2000, and then again in 2008, it's painful to look at the statements and see that it's down, but if you don't lose your head, if you don't panic and you leave it in, it'll come back, and it has come back. So you've got time on your side. You don't have to be concerned so much about the ups and downs of the market while you're investing, while you're in the growth phase. But once you hit retirement, that's called disinvesting. And here you get a whole new dynamic at work. And that's where I'm going to take you to the chart of how will market ups and downs affect your retirement. So we're going to start on the left-hand side, which is the accumulation phase. And we're simply going to take a person with a $100,000 portfolio. At age 40, let's pretend the guy had $100,000. Now, portfolio A begins with 3 negative years, -9%, -12%, -22%. So at the end of the 3 years, his $100,000 has sunk to $62,000. Oh no. But as long as he doesn't lose his head, as long as he keeps the money in there, then it comes back. 14, 19, 5, 17. By age 48, he's even again. And then it continues with ups and downs all the way through. By the time he reaches age 65, if you average out all these numbers, it's a net 8%. This is the exact same result he would have gotten had the market grown by a straight 8% each year. His $100,000 over those 25 years would have grown to $621,115. That's very nice. Now look at portfolio B. Same guy starts with $100,000. He doesn't have down years at the beginning. He has the up years at the beginning. He gets his down years at the end. The last 3 years are 3 negatives. In fact, if you look at the chart carefully, you will see that the returns in portfolio B are the exact opposite of portfolio A. A begins with -9, -12, -22, then +14, +19. Look at the last 5 years. of the other one, 19, 14, minus 22, minus 12, minus 9. It's exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite. Does it make a difference? Not at all. As long as you're not taking money out, net 8% is going to be net 8% regardless of the sequence of returns. It doesn't matter if the down years are at the beginning or at the end. Either way, he's going to wind up with exactly the same amount of money. Okay? But now, what about in retirement? So here he reached age 65, he's got $621,000, which is where we're starting the right-hand side of the page. So what we're going to do here, it's assuming he's taking withdrawals of 5%, and it's going to be, the amount of withdrawal is going to be increased by 3% a year in order to keep up with inflation. Okay? Starting value. We're going to do the same exact sequence of returns that we did the first time. Compare Portfolio A annual return on the pink column to Portfolio A annual return on the yellow column. They're the exact same numbers all the way through. Same thing with Portfolio B. On the white, it starts 19, 18, 22. On the right-hand column, again, 19, 18, 22. You all see that? It's the exact same returns in the exact same reverse order. But look what happens. In Portfolio A, he starts with $621,000. He had 3 down years at the beginning. In addition to the market losing value, he's also withdrawing 5% a year with a slight adjustment for inflation. So by the end of 3 years, his $621,000 is down to less than half. He's down to $308,000. Now, even though he's got a series of good years coming, he can't recover from those down years. And so he will run out of money at age 84. Okay? On the other hand, on the far right column, where he had the 3 good years at the beginning, so that after 3 years of 19, 18, and 22% returns, even though he's taking out 5% a year, his value has grown to $945,000 because the value is increasing faster than his withdrawal rate. Well, now, even though the returns continue to be up and down and up and down, and even though at the end he has 3 down years, he reaches age 90, not only has he not run out of money, he's got $1.8 million left. Do you all see this?
No. I see it.
Because the key is, on the left-hand side, it made no difference what order the returns were because you weren't touching the money. So whether you have good years at the beginning, bad years at the end, bad years at the beginning, good years at the end, the net is 8%, you'll be okay. It'll be the exact same amount at the end. But once you start taking money out, while the market is going down, that's like a double hit. And that really hurts. So in the yellow column, he had 3 down years at the beginning. His $621,000 went down to $308,000, even though he had some good years after that. But he's taking money out each year, and remember, it's 5% of the original amount, adjusted for inflation. So he's actually going to run out of money. The bottom line is, if you have down years at the beginning of retirement, and you're taking money out, you stand a pretty good chance of running out of money. But if you don't have bad years at the beginning, then there's a good chance that your money can last. But you have no control over that. That's the real key. You have no control over that. This is called sequence of return risk, which only becomes an issue in retirement. It's not an issue while you're saving, because you're not taking money out while you're saving. But once you start taking money out, it goes down in 2 ways. One, it goes down because the market return is going down, the value is going down. It's also going down because you're taking money out. That makes the amount left even less. So that's Okay.
The government now forces you to take off the minimum distribution.
Yeah.
Is that forcing your money down?
Yes. Yeah. The government minimum, the minimum required distributions are designed so that that you should use up all your money before you die. That's why they have those. They have it for two reasons. One, they want to collect their taxes because they haven't been collecting them the whole time while you were saving it. And two, it's designed as a retirement income plan, not as a legacy plan.
So they're forcing the money down.
Yes.
So that you will run out of money.
You may. It depends on what it's invested in. You may. Yes.
That's only in an IRA. Is he reinvesting his dividends in this fund? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. So he's an initial stock. He's not taking the edge, just leaving it there, whatever it is, and it's growing.
In the first 25 years.
No, I'm talking about the last.
The last 25 years, yeah?
He's not taking anything out in the last 25 years.
No, he is. This section on the right is distribution. He's taking out 5% a year, adjusted, increasing by 3% a year for inflation.
But that portfolio is doing the same thing, is it not?
Yes, except that in the beginning, in portfolio A, it's gone down the first 3 years, so he really gets beaten up by it. In portfolio B, he's doing the same exact withdrawals, but the market is outperforming his withdrawals, so his amount goes up.
I lost something here.
All right, we'll talk later, okay?
What are the portfolios?
It doesn't matter. We'll talk later. We'll talk later. Now, in financial planning circles, the danger zone is the 5 years before retirement and the 5 years after retirement. As if a person is 5 years from retirement today and the market is at all-time highs and everybody's feeling good about the stock market, that's where the danger is, because if he leaves his money completely in equities in the market, or any portion of it that's in the market, could be at risk of going down over the next 5 years, and then he has to start tapping into it. He may not have the option of waiting for the market to rebound. So those are the 5 years before retirement, and as we just pointed out, the first 5 years in retirement can make a world of difference. So that's the areas that really need to be explored to see, are there any other options to take market risk off the table, which we'll get to. Let's move on. Another type of risk that is possible with any investment account is excess withdrawal risk. If you take out too much, then you have a better chance of running out of money. And there's all kinds of discussions going on within the financial services industry. What's a safe withdrawal rate? It used to be thought it was 4%, except that now after the recent turmoil in 2008, now they're down to about 3%, 3.5%. There's all kinds of lumdus and tyra that goes into figuring out what's the proper withdrawal rate. But at whatever rate it is, there is no guarantee that you won't run out of money. And finally, another part of longevity risk is something that Rabbi Hochberg mentioned before, which is long-term care risk. You know, the fact I mentioned before that there's a very good chance that we're going to live a long time. Well, that's good news and it's bad news. The good news is you may live a long time, but the bad news is the longer we live, the better the chances that we're at some point down the road going to be infirm and need help taking care of ourselves, which is called long-term care. And that can be very costly for if any of you have had any experience with it, with parents, for example, you would, you know what I'm talking about. So, as we look towards retirement, let's look globally. What is the goal? The goal should be, while we work, we have generally regular, steady income. If we're salaried, it's certainly predictable, even if a person is in a business that has ups and downs. But there's a certain range of income that a person feels comfortable counting on. So how do you replace regular, steady income from working years with regular, steady income in retirement years? So it used to be, the old plan was what they call the three-legged stool. You had Social Security, you had a company pension, and you had private savings. Okay? The new reality is we still have Social Security. Company pensions have gone the way of the dinosaur. They're less and less common unless you're working for the government. In 1975, 62% of full-time workers had a company pension. In 2009, that number was down to 7%. The companies got smart. They don't want that risk. They don't want the risk of having to pay the pensions. Instead, 401k plans took their place. Those rose from 16% to 67%. The difference is, in a company pension, the risk is on the company because they've got to pay you the money. In a 401k plan, the risk is on you because you've got to manage the investments, you've got to manage the withdrawals, and there are no guarantees. So whereas in the old days, the Social Security was guaranteed for life, the company pension was guaranteed for life, and you made up the difference with private savings. Nowadays, the only thing that's guaranteed is Social Security. Everything else is up for grabs. So let's start talking first about Social Security. Now, the myth is that Social Security is finished. And you shouldn't count on it. I think to this crowd, and I'm including myself in this crowd, my guess is, and this is just my guess, is that we probably don't have that much to worry about. There is a Social Security Trust Fund, which is estimated to last until 2033, which is another 19 years. And so what's going to happen then? Well, obviously, changes are going to have to take place. Changes have already taken place. When I was growing up, and when you were growing up, the full retirement age was 65. Now, for some of us, it's 66. For younger people, it's going to be 67. So they've already increased the retirement age, which of course makes a lot of sense because people are living so much longer. You know, when Social Security began in 1935, I believe, the retirement age was 65. You know what the average longevity was? 62. Most people didn't even make it to 65. Today, we've learned that most people are making it into their 80s. I think the national average is now 84. So they'll make changes along the way. My guess is that it will probably affect younger workers, not those who are already retired or who are near retirement. So now, what is it? How much does it come to? What's it worth? So let's take a typical couple. I could call them Mr. and Mrs. Adler, or I could call them Mr. and Mrs. Preil, because it sort of describes my situation too, where the husband worked, full-time for many years, and the wife was in and out of the workforce, out when raising children and then coming back in. So they're going to have different Social Security benefits based on how much money they earned and how much they contributed. So when can you start taking Social Security benefits? What's the earliest age? 62. What's called full retirement age, let's call it for our purposes today 66. Why should I wait? Why shouldn't I take it at 62 if they'll give it to me at 62? Why should I wait till 66?
Well, it's significantly less, and the amount doesn't change once you take it early. Even when you hit 66, it doesn't go back up to the full amount.
That's right. The amount you start taking at 62 becomes your amount for the rest of your life. It's 75% of what it would be if you waited till 66. Okay? In addition to which, if you're still working, it's offset by the amount you earn, so it doesn't pay to do that. But even, what about 66? I can keep all the money. It's not it's not offset by earnings. Should I wait or should I take it at 66?
Well, it's not automatic, but if you can wait, it increases by 8% a year, but depends if you have other resources you can access before you. Okay.
It increases by 8% a year. That means whatever you would get at 66, you get a third more if you wait till age 70. An 8% growth per year. That's not the kind of return, guaranteed return, you can get anywhere else. And therefore, this is takeaway number one. Again, all things being equal, if you have a history of poor health, that's a different story. But if all else being equal, if you can wait until 70 for the main earner, the higher earner, to take his Social Security until age 70, that's a smart way to go. Because not only does it increase his amount, let's call it his, the husband, but when he dies, what happens? The wife steps up to his higher amount. So that higher amount becomes her survivor benefit as well. So you're not only figuring one life, that's the amount that's going to last for 2 lives, for the longer of the 2. So if at all possible, takeaway number 1 would be wait until age 70 to start taking Social Security, even if it means having to reach into assets, into other savings in order to make it till age 70. It still pays in the long run. Now, there are all kinds of other nuances here that, for example, if the husband made more than twice as much as the wife, it would make sense for the wife, instead of taking her own benefit at 66, to take her spousal benefit at 66, and then switch to her own at 70, which could be even higher than her spousal benefit. They're all different permutations, much too complicated to get into in a broad audience, but there is Social Security planning, which has become a major field in its own right. If you're interested in exploring it further, you need to talk with a financial advisor. So what are we talking about in dollars? How much can you expect from Social Security? Well, if you worked full-time for 35 years and you earned the maximum taxable amount each year, which this year is $115,000. When you retire at age 60, your full retirement amount would be about $30,000. If you wait till 70, that goes up to $40,000. If you figure in a spousal benefit too, you could be talking another $20 or $30 or maybe even $40,000 depending on the wife's work history, right? But it's not going to be less than half of his. So that's not bad, $60,000, $70,000 a year, but it is taxable. Not all of it, but most of it. And if you're in a place where you are earning that kind of money to get that kind of benefit, you probably need more than $70,000 a year in retirement as well. The good thing about Social Security is it is indexed for inflation. There is a cost of living adjustment that takes place every year, or in years when there is inflation. There were a couple of years recently where it didn't go up. I think this past year they just announced it went up by like 1.7%. But that's a very nice feature, because the amount I'm saying is just in present day dollars. It doesn't even take into effect what would happen down the road. Here's takeaway number 2. If you move to Israel, your Social Security benefits are not taxable by either the United States or the State of Israel. 1995 treaty between the United States and the State of Israel that exempts Social Security benefits to people who live in Israel, or who live in Israel 6 months of the year, are exempt from taxes in both countries. Could that change? Of course it could, but right now that's the law. So that's a real nice benefit. Okay, so that takes care of the Social Security piece. What do we do in the absence of a company pension? So what I'm going to suggest is create your own pension. Create your own pension. And how do you do that? You do that by acquiring products that guarantee payment for as long as you live. What is this product called? An annuity. That's by definition what an annuity is. It pays you money for as long as you live. Now, there are a lot of different flavors of annuities. There are fixed annuities, and there are variable annuities. We'll talk about both of them. A fixed annuity is the old-fashioned annuity. It means you take a sum of money, you give it to the insurance company, and they will tell you on the day you give them the money how much money you're going to receive each month or each year for the rest of your life, guaranteed. And you can build in inflation into that as well. You can take it as a flat amount, or you can take it with an inflation adjustment, which means it'll start lower and then go higher. What's the risk? The risk is that if you die before you reach, age expectancy, life expectancy, then in a sense you've lost. Because you might have done better to keep the money and take the money out and you would have something to leave over. But that's part of the insurance. That's part of the guarantee. Why do you think that you can give the company, let's say $100,000, and they're going to promise you $7,200 a year? Where are they getting the 7.2% from? They're not getting it from investments. The real money that they're getting to give out to you is called mortality credits. They're basically paying the people who live with the money of the people who died. That's what an annuity means. That's the insurance part of it. But what you're getting out of it is you're getting a guarantee that of an amount of money that you decide is the amount you are comfortable with having as your base income for the rest of your life. You add that onto your Social Security, and now you can sleep at night knowing that worst case scenario, you're going to have X amount of dollars per year essentially for the rest of your life. You can buy it as a joint also, so that it's for you and your wife. They're all different permutations. But the basic idea is, if you want to replace regular income, guaranteed income, with guaranteed income, this is one way to do it. Now, you can do it as an immediate annuity, so they'll start paying you out right away. You can do it as a deferred annuity, that you can put it in and wait, let's say 5 years before retirement, you want to start planning, which is what you should be doing. You take a certain amount of money, you put it into the fixed annuity. On the day you put it in, they'll tell you 5 years from now how much they're going to pay you for the rest of your life, guaranteed. Okay? If you think about it, it's the opposite of life insurance. In life insurance, you quote-unquote win if you die young. If you live a long time, you're not going to, you basically paid all the money that you're getting back. With an annuity, you win if you live a long time, because they are ultimately going to pay you out a lot more than you put in. Yes. All right, people, so what about the cost? What about the cost? You know what? I don't care. They're promising me money. They're guaranteeing me income. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about income, retirement income. We're not talking about legacy. That's a different discussion. But if the idea is how to live and not run out of money, this is the way not to run out of money. Is there a fee? Of course there's a fee built in, right? They have to protect themselves too, right? But if you're getting a return out of it, what's the difference with the fee is? That's why, everybody talks about, oh, annuities are no good, they have fees. Of course they have fees. How else do you make guarantees without fees? As long as I'm getting what I'm getting and I'm happy with what I'm getting, so I'll pay the fee. Does that make sense? Okay. The other type of annuity is a variable annuity. Variable annuity works differently, completely differently than the fixed annuity. A variable annuity is the money is invested in separate accounts that you direct, whether it's equities, whether it's bonds, or some combination of the above. But what makes this different than a mutual fund is that it comes with guarantees, and this is the only way that it's really being sold today. It's being sold with what are called living benefits riders, which means that if the market goes up, then your account value goes up and you win. Let's say the market is flat. Well, the company promises that each year they're going to credit you with 5 or 6 or 7% added to your initial amount, and that amount will be used for income purposes to determine what your payout, your annual payout can be. Now, that's not your money that you can actually take and walk away. They're not promising you a 5% rate of return or a 6% rate of return. The market part is going to do what the market part does. But for income purposes, they're promising to increase your benefit base by X amount per year, and some of them even work that they'll guarantee you that after 10 years, they'll simply double what you put in going in. So for example, if you put in $100,000 at age 50 or 60, 10 years later, what happens? Well, if the market did well and the market went up by more than double in those 10 years, let's say the market went up to 250 or 300,000, that's great. Now you've got 250 or 300,000 there that you can either walk away with or you can use as a base amount to take withdrawals for the rest of your life. What if the market didn't do well? What if the market was flat? What if the market went down? When you buy the annuity, the company guarantees that in 10 years' time, that will, for income purposes, be worth $200,000, and you will now be allowed to take, the company must now pay you 4% of that every year for the rest of your life and for the life of your wife. So you're guaranteed the day you start that you're going to get no less than $8,000 a year 10 years from now for as long as you or your wife live. Again, if the market did well and it's worth more than $200,000, let's say it's worth $300,000, well, now you're guaranteed $12,000 a year for as long as you or your wife live. So there are guarantees on the upside, on the growth side, and then there are guarantees on the withdrawal amount that as long as you don't take out more per year than the amount that they set, whether it's 4% or 4.5% or 5%, depending on the contract, depending on your age, they will promise to pay you for as long as you live. That's the annuity part. They promise to pay you for as long as you live, even if your money runs out, even if your investment account runs out. Now, if it doesn't run out, your heirs get whatever is left in the investments. But if the money does run out, then the company has to keep paying you anyway. Yes, there are fees. To get these guarantees, you have to pay a fee. The company they have to manage, they have risk they've got to manage. But it's a way of minimizing, of still being involved in the market and yet not be at risk. Because if the market goes up, you gain. If the market goes down, you don't lose. It's a variable annuity with living benefit guarantee riders. A number of companies have them. It's becoming it's becoming more and more popular. Again, it's a way, we said before, if you're only in fixed then you're going to lose out to inflation, so you got to be in the market. But the market has market risk, so what do? With this annuity, you can be in the market and still have guarantees that you're going to get at least the minimum amount of money based on what they tell you in the contract for as long as you live. Now, what are the fees? The fees do not come out of the guarantees. The example I gave you, $100,000 grows to $200,000, they'll give you 4% of that, that's $8,000. That's not affected by the fees. The fees affect the market returns. And to be very honest with you, the way it works is you're basically going to give up about 3 to 3.5% on the returns by being in this annuity. Whereas if you had invested the money all on your own in the market, you could have gotten, let's say, 10%. If you have it in the annuity wrapper, in the annuity envelope, then it'll probably be more in the range of 6.5 to 7%. On the other hand, how many of us, or how many of you, who are in retirement or close to retirement are comfortable with having 100% of your money in equities? Probably not. You're probably in a blended portfolio anyway, which is at least 50% bonds. So that's anyway going to impact on your returns. The beauty of the variable annuity is you can invest as aggressively as you want. You can swing for the home run. And the worst that'll happen is you'll hit a single. Instead of going 50-50 and automatically losing out on market returns because you're in bonds, which is inherently less volatile than, and therefore lower returns than equity markets, you can be either 80 or 100% invested in equities, depending on the company. So you have the chance to experience the market upside, such as last year where the market was up 30%. If you were in a 50-50 portfolio, you didn't get 30%. But if you were in an annuity, you might have gotten close to 30%. All right, it was cut down by 3 or 4% for fees. You got 27 or 25 or 26 or 27%. Still better than 15. So there's that other advantage that is a nuance that you have to keep in mind. It gives you the freedom to invest more aggressively than you would otherwise be comfortable doing because of the guarantees. Okay? Next, long-term care risk. Rabbi Hochberg talked about this a little bit. Let me put some numbers on it. The risk is that if you need help, it's going to be expensive. A home health aide, a licensed home health aide in New York costs between $20 and $25 an hour, which can come to $250 a day just for an 8 or 10-hour shift, which can add up to $75,000 a year. A nursing home can be $375 to $400 a day, which is close to $150,000 a year per person. These are enormous numbers. These are staggering numbers. And please remember, these amounts have to come out of income, not out of assets. If you spend it out of assets for the first spouse who needs it, what's going to be left for the second spouse? So this is scary. Medicare provides minimal benefits for long-term care. And if some people will say, well, I'll go on Medicaid. Remember that Medicaid is essentially health care it's welfare for poor people. It's health care for poor people. And there's even a law about it that says you have to give up all your assets in order to qualify, and they look back 5 years. So you have to give up all your assets, and you have to do it 5 years before you need the help. And that's, for some people, it might be the only choice you have, but it's certainly not a lechatchila. So fortunately, there's something that Rabbi Hochberg referred to called long-term care insurance, where you pay premiums and they promise to cover you. Now, it's a little bit complicated. Long-term care insurance is probably the most complicated insurance product that you ever will have to buy because there's so many moving pieces. A, you have to pick how much amount you want per day or per month. B, how long do you want it to last? C, do you want to build in inflation? D, is it going to be a reimbursement contract where you have to show bills for licensed care and then get reimbursed for it? Or is it going to be a cash benefit where they simply pay you the full amount of cash each day and you can spend it on whoever you want? Which is a much bigger advantage because you can hire an unlicensed person as well if they're good. So there are a lot of moving parts, and it usually requires professional help in order to help you navigate the choices. Here is another great takeaway. You're going to love this one, New Yorkers. New York State provides a 20% tax credit on your state taxes for long-term care premiums paid, which means if you pay $10,000 a year for your long-term care insurance, you'll get a $2,000 credit towards your New York State taxes. A credit, is money back in your pocket. It's not a deduction. It's a credit. So that's a huge advantage that New Yorkers have and other people like we New Jerseyans don't have. It essentially is like a 20% discount on the cost of the long-term care. There are other products that are newer out there called linked products, which are a combination of a universal life policy and a long-term care policy, but that's a whole different parsha. So I don't want to get into that right now. So let's review. We talked about risks. We talked about longevity risk, inflation risk, market risk, excess withdrawal risk, long-term care risk. And then we presented ways of dealing with these different issues. Longevity risk, the risk of running out of money. The answer is to cover at least basic needs with guaranteed income, starting with Social Security and layering on top of that some kind of annuity. Inflation risk, the way you deal with inflation risk is not being completely in fixed income, it's by being in equities as well. But that leads you to market risk and sequence of return risks. Well, you can address that by using the variable annuities with the guaranteed living benefit riders, because it can only go up, it can't go down. Even if the market goes down, your benefit base increases, and your minimum withdrawal amount is set when you start taking withdrawal. Now, it stays level even if the market goes down, but if the market actually goes up, you could get a raise because your percentage is now off of a higher amount. Excess withdrawal risk, it's not an issue if you have the variable annuity because they tell you how much you can take out without losing the guarantee. The company has to pay your guaranteed amount for as long as you or your spouse are alive. And finally, long-term care risk can be handled by having a long-term care insurance policy. So the teacher in me certainly hopes that you have learned some valuable information today. I hope that you will be motivated by the issues raised here to meet with a financial advisor in order to address your unique circumstances. And may Hashem bless us all with long, healthy, and prosperous lives. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes. 1 second, please. If you would all kindly take a moment or two to fill out the evaluation form that I gave out, the one that's attaching the nest egg, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you. Go ahead. Is there a minimum or maximum age to apply for the burial annuity? Yeah, there is a minimum age. It's usually around 35. The maximum age, I believe, is around 90. So I believe that that's the case. Yes?
The annuities are not insured by government.
Right.
It's not.
No. The products I was, okay. The only thing I talked about that's insured by the government is Social Security. And we know how much that's worth. Right, the guarantee. However, that's why when we're talking about buying annuities, whether it's a fixed annuity or a variable annuity, you need to examine the health of the company. Now, there are some very, very good insurance companies out there that have been around for over 100 years and that are extremely highly rated. Look, the U.S. government is rated AA+. There are a lot of good insurance companies that are rated AA+ or some even better. So at this point, I think I would have more confidence in the insurance companies than I might in the U.S. government. No, but that is an issue. It's a fair issue to raise, but it shouldn't be over dramatized. A good, strong insurance company is a pretty darn safe bet. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Mr. Preil. I think we all learned a lot.